Welcome back. This is episode 4 of MADCAST, and I'm your host, Madman. Hope you're doing well in your life. Hope everything's going okay for you. Let's get into it, shall we? So, in this episode, I want to talk about order and chaos, and sort of dualism in general, as an idea. And at the end of the video, hopefully provide some kind of alternative to that way of thinking. An alternative that I think might work better. I don't know. Obviously, I haven't tested it. I haven't played The Sims 4 and modded the game so that my Sims are non-dualistic or non-binary. That's another buzzword term that's popped up in the past couple of years, which I think is it's not a viable alternative because it's just a sexually specific thing, which is not to diminish sexuality, but just to say that it's limited to that category of human behavior. But I think the whole non-binary thing is an expression of dissatisfaction with the binary, which I do think is a real problem, and I do think it's a topic worth discussing. So we're going to discuss it right now, in fact. So, like the other videos, I've managed to squeeze my brain like a stone, and I have 5 drops of blood that I want to talk about. There are 5 points here. And the first of these 5 points is something I alluded to in the last video when I talked about language. And that point has to do with order and chaos. So the thing we call order and the thing we call chaos. I don't want to get into semantics too deeply in these videos because it would make them 9 hours long and I wouldn't be able to actually publish them or put them out there, rather. But it should suffice to say that order is some sort of regularity or regulation of reality and time and of space. It's some kind of force that wants to construct things that are regular and solid and that persist as long as they can against decay. that should sort of be self-evident to most people. Most people know what order means, but let's just lay that out there at the start of this video, just to do it, just to lay it out. And chaos is sort of the flower bed of fertilizer. It's the random chance and chaos theory type shit that the roots of the flowers of order can dig into and suck sustenance from. Chaos is like entropy, it's like darkness, it's like death, it's all these shadow types of things that Jung talked about, which are evil from the perspective of order, rightly so, but necessary for it. And again, from chaos's perspective, order is evil because it just feeds off of chaos and tries to create these forever enduring perfect crystalline structures that last forever, which is itself an impossible ideal. That's part of the point of this video. The failure of this binary thinking is that both these characterizations of the nature of reality, or the nature of two parts of reality, it's a division of reality into two halves. It's one division. It's an oversimplification. And that's not to say that there aren't evil forces and good forces. It's to say that how we've divided reality and defined those forces is insufficient to understand any of them. So, the first point that I have here is that if order and chaos are influencing each other so deeply, on such a fundamental level, that they actually function to define each other, then this is not a one-to-one yin and yang, black and white, blue and red relationship. Order and chaos are and have been and always will be influencing each other far more deeply. This is a bit of a dark metaphor. It's not meant to be dark, but it's the first one that popped into my head. But it's kind of like a bad relationship where the relationship thrives on conflict. Like you have to have a fight every 2 months with your partner and it kind of lets you both blow off steam, and you exchange ideas in a kind of suboptimal, like forced way, which works for a lot of people. And you know, more power to you if you have a successful family and kids, and every 2 months you have to have a little private fight, whatever. Like, who cares? I'm just using it as a metaphor for this. Okay, I'm not making a moral judgment about relationships. I'm just using it as a metaphor. But that's sort of my point. There's a dimension of moral judgment that's applied to the interaction between chaos and order. And order, I think, is overall better than chaos. If you're an ordered, patterned being, if you are composed of language, literally, if you are alive, if you have DNA, even if you're an inanimate crystal in the ground, you rely on order to literally constitute your being, not just to allow you to survive, but to actually build you. So obviously you want to support order. Who wouldn't? That'd be stupid. But I made a point in the last video where I talked about the most viable forms of order that tend to persist in the universe. And life is a good example of this. Life is constantly mutating and changing. It's utilizing the fundamentally mutative quality of chaos, and it's sort of co-opting it to serve order. So to create constantly new forms of order is a way to rebel against chaos using its own nature against it. And I think that's been true forever. I think that's just an aspect of this universe, or this reality, or this holographic video game, or this server. Again, you pick your metaphor. You know, mutate your own mind. Pick whatever metaphor works for you. They all mean the same thing. They all point to the same truth. They're just different ways of articulating it. But it seems like fundamentally reality is not a struggle between order and chaos. It's a relationship. And that relationship involves a lot of cross pollution, transmission, a lot of osmosis between different strategies. You know, order ideally, the extreme of order wants to never have to change. It wants to be the same crystal thing forever. The ideal of chaos is to never form any order whatsoever. It just wants to, it doesn't even want to mutate. It wants to not even have to mutate. It just wants to be randomness forever. It's random, blah, 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 blah. It's crazy. It's insanity, you might say. You know, the Joker from The Dark Knight was a hell of a lot more aligned with order than with chaos. He just had a rogue order he wanted to promote. So you have these two forces fighting each other forever. But are they really fighting? I don't think that's a viable way of characterizing that relationship. I don't think it's a viable or accurate way of characterizing the relationship between order and chaos. I think that order and chaos are in a relationship, and they're trying to better themselves by stealing ideas and strategies from each other. And they're doing this all the time. And I don't know if there's any sympathy between these two things or these forces. I'm not gonna go into like anthropomorphizing them. Like chaos is a man and chaos is a woman and order is a man, and this is actually just a relationship metaphor, guys. I'm not gonna go into that because I think again that's an oversimplification. It's too specific. It doesn't account for the functions of these two ideas as ways of interpreting reality, because that's all they are at the end of the day. We could be totally wrong about order and chaos. There could be a third form called, you know, Vagkratha, like some Cthulhu term. There could be a third thing. There could be 10 other things, 10 other forces that we don't understand. My point is just in our current paradigm, we've divided reality, and every culture's, I was going to say guilty of this. Every culture has done this to some extent. They've said there's order and there's chaos. There's right and wrong. There's good and evil. There's the traditions that make the cave society continue, and there's rebellious behaviors that erode it and destroy it. That's true. If you're a human being with two hemispheres to your brain that are separated by a cartilaginous barrier so the two halves can't even fucking talk to each other, then that's true. If you're in a body like this, then that's true. Your society is going to reflect the physiognomic and biological and chemical aspects of your language vessel, your spacesuit, so to speak. But these two forces in a human context, in an anthropocentric context, which is a very high-minded kind of academic term that just means human-centric, which obviously if you're a human you should support that. If you're in a human body, why the fuck would you not support anthropocentric behavior? You know, unless it involves some sort of mass suicide where we're poisoning our water and air supply. Even if it's a human-driven thing, obviously you should oppose that. But anthropocentrism, is not inherently evil. It's a result of the human body being the primary vessel for language on this planet or this plane or this circuit board. Again, pick your metaphor, whatever you want to call it. So that kind of rounds out the first point, that I think the relationship between order and chaos is more complex than just two opposing forces fighting each other. There's a definite osmosis between the two where chaos is producing temporary forms of order or fake forms of order to attack order, and order is sniping the strategies of chaos to try to make itself more resilient to chaos. And in the end, it's a battle of resilience. It's like, well, which one of these two forces, again, according to the human dualistic metaphor, which force is going to succeed? Well, it's going to be whichever one poaches viable strategies from its mirror force, its alternate, its opponent, whatever you want to call it. And there are a lot of people who are adherents of order that say, well, order always wins. It might lose temporarily, but then it wins. And adherents to chaos will say the same thing. Well, chaos loses to order a lot, but then it eventually wins in the end. It's like, well, it depends on your frame of reference. Like, if you're making that claim in a time when chaos is dominant, then congratulations, you're correct in that time period. Same thing with order. Well, if there's a period of time when order has won, and you're saying, well, look, order won. Look at this. Isn't this great? It's the same bullshit. And again, I'm not even implying that there's some third thing or some middle ground that's a perfect fusion of 50% order and 50% chaos. I'm not even getting into that. I'm just saying that the relationship is more complex than two opposing armies. It's a lot more complex than that. There's a theory in history that when two cultures encounter each other, there's always an osmosis of ideas and behaviors, and that osmosis is not predictable. Historians love to be able to systematize history. They love to be able to make arguments that do that, where they can say, well, it's the great man theory that changes the course of history, or, well, it's not the great man theory, it's socioeconomic and cultural conditions that produce a great man. That's one example. There's lots of arguments among historians. Most historians, I don't think, would disagree with the argument that there's always an unpredictable osmosis between two cultures when they clash or encounter each other in a fundamental way. Like when two cultures sort of fuse, whether it's because of immigration or because of one country taking over another by force, whatever the impetus of the fusion is, there's always a transfer of knowledge between cultures. There's always an osmosis. And it's impossible to predict what culture A will take from culture B and vice versa. People in the US really like Mexican food. So, okay, they took the cuisine from the Mexicans. Mexican people, they must have taken something from the States in return. They must have taken the form of governance maybe, or some architectural meme or some other way of organizing society. something else passed through that osmosis barrier. And again, I'm not like advocating globalism. I'm not like doing some crypto globalist argument here. That could be horrible for both the Mexicans and the States, okay? It could be a bad thing. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that there's an osmosis going on. That's all I'm saying. So that's point number one. Point number two. The dual hemisphere structure of the human brain is inherently conducive to dualistic thinking. And this might be a good thing, or it might be the thing that dooms humanity to be replaced by robots or aliens or whatever the fuck you believe. Pick your opponent. Pick your nefarious, your spooky other, your spooky opponent. It could be anybody. I do think that this is worth thinking about, despite the fact that you're going to have to think it in a two-hemisphere brain. You know, that's your constraint. You have to think about this, this fantasy of transcending dualism. You have to think about it in a dualistic brain, which might drive you nuts, or it might at least waste your life, and you'll come up with no insights about it. Because most mammals seem to have two-hemisphere brains. I don't know if there's any creature on Earth. In fact, I was going to look this up before the video, but you know what, guys? We're going to look it up now. Does any animal have more than two hemispheres of the brain? Okay, 10 animals with multiple brains. Well, the octopi are one. They're the big one. Leeches, octopi, gastropods, squid, cockroaches, mosquitoes, cuttlefish. Okay, so we'll focus on the Cthulhuid ones because they're the most fun. Oh, and bumblebees. That's interesting. Okay. So let's focus on two things here. I'll do a bit of a tangent. So you have octopi, cuttlefish, and squids, and you have bumblebees. And they have brains that are not dual hemisphere structures. They're different somehow. I'm not going to look up exactly how they're different. Look it up your fucking self. Okay? I've given you the prompt. And again, I'm believing Google. Google's telling me this. You know, if it's Google's wrong, then I'm wrong. I don't fucking care. The most viable example, I think, is the octopus one, because I have read something. I've read more articles about this, and I've actually read about it outside of just a tertiary Google search. But the octopus has its brain distributed amongst 8 tentacles. So it has a central brain and 8 tentacles, which, funnily enough, if you add those two numbers together, it makes up 9. And that's one of my later points. It's about the number 9. It's not some gematria schizo shit. It's a little more than that, okay? So let's focus on octopi, in fact, because I don't know that much about bees, but I've done a lot of reading about octopuses because I'm a Lovecraft fanboy. I like his work. It's interesting. So an octopus doesn't just have a single brain. It has 9 brains. It has 8 limbs and a central brain. And each one of the limbs can actually independently function. It's hard to conceptualize that as a human being. There's an author called Peter Watts who's written a short story about this. You can look him up. He has a website. Just look up Peter Watts. He's a famous Canadian science fiction author. Essentially, an octopus has 8 sub-brains that communicate with the central one, but they're also autonomous. So an octopus's limbs can respond more quickly to finding some prey, or to avoiding being preyed upon, or to just navigating some coral labyrinth. Because each limb, each hand, has its own brain and can make decisions independent of the central brain. So there's a very good example of a non-dualistic form of existence that we have, I I don't think studied well enough. I hope there's a lot of funding going into studying how the octopus brains work, because that's very important. Dualism might just be killing us right now, and it might be that we have to study how an octopus thinks in order to survive. And we've done this in the past. You look at how a bird flies and how a supersonic jet is shaped and structured. It's an echo of nature. Human inventions are echoes of the laws of nature. So it stands to reason that if we're going to improve our own cognition, if we're going to actually get away from this potentially fatal binary way of thinking, we have to copy nature again, like we've done a million times. So we may have to copy the octopus brain to survive. That's just a crazy science fiction idea. It's not, there's no science, there's no papers I can cite that will espouse that viewpoint. It's just something I pull out of my ass. But it's relevant to my second point, which is this dual hemisphere structure is what makes us think of everything in terms of halves, two halves or two opponents, which, again, it might be a good thing. It might be that we have to think this way. It might be that we have to survive by thinking this way. But I would doubt that. I mean, we have several thousand years worth of records of constant warfare, of mistrust and othering, which I hate to use that term, but it's an accurate term. You think of the guy next to you as an alien if he doesn't think the same way, doesn't have the same customs, doesn't look like you. Again, that might be a good thing. I don't know. But it's a trend. You can't argue that it's not real, that people aren't racist. Of course they are. Whether it's good or bad is not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a thing. It's real. The utility of it is what's worth thinking about. And this sort of constant, opponent A and opponent B, good guy and bad guy, this whole dualistic thing, to me seems like it's been played out. It's been played out for thousands of years. And if we continue to entrench ourselves in this mentality, if we can't find a better way to exist, we're probably just going to keep destroying ourselves. And I don't think that doubling or tripling or quadrupling down on this mentality through any sort of exotic propaganda or language, or reviving communism and calling it Nazism, or reviving communism, reviving Nazism and calling it communism, or blah, 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 blah. If it's all just based on binary thinking, it's the same outmoded model of thought. And yes, it's specific to our brains, but if we're at a point in history when we can actually change our own bodies and our own brains and potentially think differently, then that might be the saving grace. That might be the little granule of light, the little offering from God, the little whisper saying to us, you have the technology to get out of the binary. I've given it to you. Quick. Embrace it or die. I don't know. Could be that's the case. Could be I'm totally wrong and I'm just nuts. I'm perfectly willing to accept that. Again, I'm just riffing, guys. I have no script for this. I have 5 points. That's it. But let's move on to point number 3. Point number 3 is that an individual person, regardless of what culture they're born in, what their race, gender, or sexuality or creed is, nobody ever only occupies a single side of this false binary. They always betray their supposed half of this perception of reality. And again, it's a human perception of reality. It's a division of things into two halves, which again is like, I took a rock and I split the rock into 2 rocks. I'm a genius. Let's base all of human society on taking big one rock and splitting it into 2 smaller rocks. I am genius. I am human. I like to take big single thing and put it into 2 things. I am a genius. Let's base all of society on this for 3 million years. Duh! Does that sound stupid to anybody else? Am I insane? I mean, I am. But does that sound a bit reductive, a bit kind of simplistic, a bit stupid? That everything's just two halves? Is everything really two halves? Everything? Really? And again, people will make all sorts of arguments, be like, well, you're just a servant of the enemy because you're trying to make us undermine our military might by saying that our opponents are not our opponents. I'm not saying they're not your opponents. I'm saying that the whole system of having good and bad, black and white, blue and red, up and down, I'm saying that whole system is fucked. Nobody is at fault more than any other member of that system. You know, I'm not an agent for any fucking cause. I don't advocate that you should have sympathy for your enemies. That's not what I'm saying. But people will claim that. If anybody actually watches these videos and gives a shit, they'll be like, "Oh, you're just advocating for some kind of globalism, or you're just an agent of the enemy." You know, Alex Jones, I got to do an impression of him because I love doing his voice. He'd say this.
Madman's he's just an agent of the globalists. He's trying to get rid of the binary, what he calls the binary. Now that binary, that's the division between good and evil. That's the division between God and Satan. And my thralls that watch this channel, my Bible Belt viewers, the ones that fund my channel and buy my supplements, I'm loyal to those people. And I'm not loyal to this madman. What he's saying, that good and evil don't exist, I'm going to willfully misinterpret what he's saying. I'm going to say he says good and evil don't exist. I'm going to say that he's an agent of Satan. Because Satan just wants everybody to be happy and peaceful and rape each other all the time and have big orgies like Bohemian Grove. And that's my view. I'm Alex Jones.
That's the type of crap that anybody who suggests any of this has to contend with. And it's a waste of time. That's why I'm glad I don't have a big following on YouTube, and I never will. Because I wouldn't be able to say what I'm saying right now if I had an audience of however many tens of thousands of people. I'd be too beholden to the bloated state of the channel to where I would have to placate the views of those people, and it would pollute my own thoughts with their inherent viewpoints. Whatever network that I had become a part of, this was a big thing too. I got to go off on a tangent. There was a big thing in graduate humanities departments about network theory. Oh, it's all about connecting with people like a network, like a giant brain. Ooh, you're a neuron in a giant brain. Well, if the other neurons are raping me with their bullshit ideas that I, as a single neuron, don't fucking agree with, then I'd rather not be part of the brain. Because the brain is just trying to eat me. It's just trying to make me think what it thinks, or what the majority of its nodes think. I mean, mischaracterizing humanity as a giant brain is another biological, scientific, and tech metaphor cranked up to 11 out of 10. It's another hubristic oversimplification of reality, in the same way that the binary system is an oversimplification of reality. I don't have an alternate system. I'm going to suggest one, though, in the future points of this video. But I don't have some infallible replacement suggestion for this. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is not to provide some kind of idyllic, replacement for what we're doing now. It's just to point out that what we're doing now kind of fucking sucks. And all we're doing is trying to justify it through more and more exotic means. We're trying to keep the binary alive when it's got stage 4 cancer and pneumonia and it's on life support. And we should let it fucking die. That's the point of this video. I don't have a suggestion for what follows it. Criticize me all you want for that. You're just a guy trying to burn society down with no suggestions. I'm not trying to burn society down, I'm trying to fucking save it. If we can mutate into something else before everybody dies, I think that would be good. Because I don't think the binary is going to keep sustaining us. And I'm not talking about any specific culture. I'm talking about humanity in general. So anyway, point number 3 was basically just that nobody, to rubber band back to things, it's that nobody's perfectly aligned with what they say they're aligned with. There's always an aspect of their oppositional perspective that informs them or constitutes them. And again, this sounds like some kind of justification for psychopathy or some sort of cope for I don't know, contrarianism or some sort of devil's advocate thing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's an osmosis between these two sides, despite how primitive and limited the two hemisphere brain model of reality is. There's still a rebel osmosis going on between the two sides. And again, if you think about a species of humans with two hemispheres in their brains imposing a dualistic mindset upon every non-human form of life around them, it kind of reframes things. You kind of look at it and go, that's insane. Why would a species with a dualistic 50-50 kind of body morphology and two hemispheres to their brains, why would they project that biological reality onto everything around them in spite of multiple examples in nature, in reality, in matter that contradict that viewpoint? Why would that species continue to stubbornly advance that model as if they can convert the whole universe into a projection of their biological selves? That seems insane to me. It's no different than a person who thinks that Star Wars is the one true religion, and it's all about the Jedi and the Sith. Well, if I look at a snail eating a leaf, well, the snail must be a Sith, and the leaf must be a Jedi. That's the level of retardation that every human being is currently interpreting reality with. We're all looking at reality going, well, it's obviously just a struggle between two things, thing A and thing B. Some people think thing B is evil, some people think thing B is good. Some people think thing A is evil, and some people think it's good. But there's only two things. It's only two. I cut reality in half. There's half number one and half number two of reality. Duh! Again, look at your own fucking brain. It's two hemispheres. You have two hands, you have two eyes. Okay, that's basically point number 3. Now, point number 4 is where I get into some interesting shit. It's where I start to talk about actual potential ways to transcend this binary. And again, I'm not some sort of religious advocate for any of these ways. I have no stake in whether or not people believe what I'm saying, because nobody watches me, which again is a grace from fucking God. That this channel has no viewers. If you want to punish me, give me 50,000 views on this video. That would really fuck with me. If you gave me that would be a monkey's paw type of thing. Don't do that. Point number 4. It relates to my life as a video game video. And point number 5 is similar to it. So these points are almost the same point, but I separated them to get to 5 points, if you want to know the truth. Point number 4 is just, there's a 9 category D&D system of character morality. And I think it's one of the most ingenious and poetic things that has ever been produced by human beings, is this beautiful just system of 9, 3, 3, 3, 3 sets of 3, making 9. What did Tesla say? The 3, the 6, and the 9? That's interesting. It's just geometry, guys. It's simple geometry. It's just triangles. It's bullshit. But this way of looking at morality more broadly than character creation in Neverwinter Nights. This way of looking at morality on a scale that is above human, on a scale that encompasses life, I think is interesting. It overlaps a lot with biology, where you have, for example, characterizations of relationships between organisms. You have parasitism, commensalism, and mutualism. That's identical to this three-tier system of good, neutral, and evil. You have parasitic organisms, which are evil, and then you have commensalistic organisms, which are neutral, and then you have mutualistic organisms, which are good. It's drawn from biology. It's a lot like how the Nazis used social Darwinism to come up with political theory. It's almost like we've been doing that ever since, haven't we? We've just been kind of hiding it, and not very well. But my point is just that this metaphorical fantasy system of looking at morality that is not tied to any specific religion, with all sorts of gay, weird, creepy rituals, it's just a system. It's a bare bones system that says, here are 9 things you could be in your life. Here are 9 paths you could walk. To me, that seems like a viable globalist foundation for a new religion. It's almost like all these video games saturating society, whether it's the West or the East or China or Australia or whatever, is a sort of preparatory mechanism for introducing this system of morality, because it actually is the best system. It's a hell of a lot better than the binary system. And I got to go back to one of my earlier points, point 2 I think it was, where I talked about octopi, cephalopods, cthulhuids, how they have a central brain with 8 tentacles, but the 8 tentacles are all independent. They're not slaves. They're separate, independent brains. Doesn't that sound a lot like the ANCAP fantasy of the States, where you have separate nodes that are all independent? You have individuals. Doesn't that sound like an octopi, cephalopod kind of structure for morality and thought? I don't know, man. It just seems like a distributed model of the mind that transcends that false binary. Seems like it might be a better way of organizing society. I don't know. Again, that's why I'm making this video. I don't know. I'm just riffing. I'm talking about shit. What are your thoughts? I would ask you to comment below, but YouTube has deemed my channel so toxic that they've turned off comments on my videos. So unfortunately, you can't comment. I'm sorry about that. Comment on one of my other videos. And just say, hey, I'm commenting on MADCAST number 4. Do that. You can still comment on those Let's Plays. They're benevolent enough. They're not talking about real ideas. Interesting shit. Again, I'm not trying to jack myself off. My ideas are not unique. These ideas have been floating around for a while. I'm just talking about shit. But the fact that these videos have the comments turned off by default, it's like, YouTube needs to get its shit together, man. They're censoring things in the name of safety that are potentially good in certain contexts, but they're enveloping channels like mine, where I have no vestige of nefarious intent. I'm not trying to corrupt the youth. I'm not trying to groom anyone. I'm not trying to fuck with anyone. I'm just trying to say what I think. And all I want is a forum where I can do that. I'm not making any money on these videos. There's no ads. I mean, the censorship is pathetic. It's pointless. It's sad. But again, if you want to comment on this video, comment on one of my benevolent Let's Plays. You know, just reference this video. Comment on another one, and I'll respond to you. I will respond if you comment. That's a promise. For now, unless there's 50,000 of you, then obviously I can't do that. Anyway, the 9-category D&D system, I think that has the potential to form the basis of some kind of not even a religion, but a global philosophy that allows different people from different cultures to assign their specific linguistic terms and values with a grid that is both enough of a constraint and enough of an open series of 9 paths that those ideas could actually fit into the evil fucking cube, the 9 by 9 square of those ideas. You know, they can go up to Saturn, onto the archive of life, which is a whole other video. I should do a video on like the Saturnine cult of the black cube. That's a very weird fucking idea. I don't know if I believe in that, but it's definitely symbolically distributed everywhere. There's a lot of black cube worship. It's a very cool idea. Even if it's bullshit, I don't care. I don't care if it's real or not. I never gave a shit about that. I don't believe in any of this shit myself, but it's like, they're like science fiction short stories. Conspiracy theories are really good science fiction short stories. That's why I've always been attracted to them. They're interesting. They're creepy. I could change some names and symbols around and publish them myself. Maybe I'll do that. But anyway, let's wrap the video up here. Let's get to point number 5. Now, point number 5 is where I have to reference some bizarre shit, speaking of conspiracy theories. So, there are 2 things I'm going to reference in this point. The first one is something called the Enneagram. And the Enneagram is a sort of astrology-like thing. It's a lot like star signs. It's that type of vibe, that type of shit. It's you know, a religious white chick kind of cope for a lack of spiritual fulfillment. It's basically fortune cookie type stuff. That's the vibe. Fortune cookie vibe. I never eat those cookies, by the way. They taste like shit. I crack them open, I get the fortune, I go, that's cool, and then I throw the fucking cookie away. They taste like ass. But that's neither here nor there. The Enneagram is a 9-pointed star-based thing, so it's again some kind of schizogeometry thing, just like the 369 shit, just like the Plato triangle stuff, the Illuminati triangle stuff. It's all just math. It's an attempt to hypnotize people with mathematic concepts, which is very sad. If you're hypnotized by simple math, you're meant to be. You should be hypnotized. You should be somebody's little pet or thrall. If math hypnotizes you, that's pathetic. But anyway, the Enneagram is a personality test type thing, and I'm going to read off the 9 different types of people. So we have the reformer or the perfectionist. That's point 1. And they all have, they have ego fixations and life traps. It's very astrological. I'm not going to read into those. I'm just going to read about the types, right? You have the perfectionist. Number 2, you have the giver. Number 3, you have the achiever. Number 4, the romantic individualist. That's me. Number 5, the observer or the investigator. Number 6, the loyal skeptic, which is a bizarre topic, because how can you be loyal if you're skeptical? Wouldn't you be skeptical of the authority that you're loyal to? That seems like a contradiction. It's almost like this is all bullshit. But I'm going to talk about it anyway, right? Number 7, the enthusiast. Number 8, the challenger or the protector. Again, sort of a contradiction in terms there. Number 9, the peacemaker or the mediator. That's also me to some extent. I like people to agree on things. I like to find common ground. It's satisfying to me when people don't want to beat each other's skulls in with stone axes. It's nicer if they would have a discussion and have a drink and play a game and enrich each other's lives. I think that's a better way of existing than constantly trying to kill each other. Maybe I'm just a pussy, man. Maybe I'm a pussy for wanting people to not want to kill each other all the time. That to me seems like a suboptimal way of existing. Sometimes you get attacked and you got to fight back. But if your base model of your culture is we're going to fight all the time, you're going to fight all the time. And eventually you'll run out of men. That's how it happens. You can min-max the stats of your culture just like you min-max your own stats as a person. But anyway, that's the Enneagram very briefly explained. It's this 9-pointed personality thing. And again, it's a lot like the octopus with its central brain and its 8 limbs. You have 9 separate personality types. You have 9 separate brains, rather than this false dichotomy of 2. And of course, I'm aware that you could say, well, most mammals have 2 hemispheres to their brains. You're just talking about a single octopus. Doesn't that mean the 2 hemisphere structure is perfect and we shouldn't change it? My whole point is that this dual hemisphere thing is getting old. I'm not saying we should all become octopuses or worship Cthulhu or some shit. All I'm saying is there is physical evidence in the animal kingdom of alternate ways of thinking. And if we ignore it, it would be a lot like ignoring that one rebellious voice in a culture that becomes the leader of the next great civilization from the ashes of the civilization that that person was born in. I do think the great man theory, if you want me to put my history nerd cards on the table, I do think it's actually individual people who are usually at least somewhat insane that are ballsy enough to contradict everything they hear around them that end up forming the basis for the next dominant culture or civilization. I do think that that's actually necessary. I do think that it's not just circumstance. It does depend upon individual people. That's why I sympathize with, for example, Sam Hyde, where he talks about Elon Musk in that video that I made a shitty reaction to. And I'm going to do another reaction to that. We'll fix that. But my point is just, it's not that you should worship great individuals and treat them like kings or gods or whatever. It's just that an individual can have a profound effect. That, to me, is the fundamental argument of the great man theory in history. And I'm talking about academic history, like studying history. It's that a single person can actually have a profound effect on tens of millions of people. Obviously, I think that's true. It's not that they're necessary, it's that they can have that effect. And I'm referencing this idea because this notion of transcending the binary, I think we need to do it by any means. And I don't think virtualizing or digitizing our human brains is going to be enough, because all we're going to be doing is creating facsimiles of dual hemisphere minds. And in a digital space, we're just going to have endless Marvel Rivals Fortnite battles between 2 sides. That's fucking boring, man. Are you Alliance or Horde? Are you red or blue? Are you black or white? If you're not white, you're a fucking idiot. If you're not black, you're fucking cringe, bro. Why not structure things in a more nuanced way? Why not use the 9 categories of the D&D system? Why not use the 9 points of the Enneagram? And the final point of my final point is to talk about the Baha'i faith, which is something you can obviously tell. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article now because I'm fucking ghosted. I'm hyper white. I've gone into hyper white mode, guys. I'm fighting for whiteness. Ooh, I'm going Super Saiyan. Ah. Anyway, of course I'm looking at the fucking Wikipedia article right now. The Baha'i faith is based on this 9-pointed star. And it's a sort of attempt at globalization. It's an early attempt at it. And I don't know who is behind it. I'm sure there's some Masons and some Brazilians that are involved in this. I don't care who is involved in it. It's interesting. It was developed in Iran, and it came about in the early 1800s. I'm not going to read the whole fucking article for you, but basically the religion relies upon this 9-pointed star as its symbol of global union. And I think if there is a type of globalism that could actually work, it would have to be based on, like I said in one of my previous videos, the idea that reality is a game, not that it trivializes life, not that you can just unalive yourself and re-roll. It's not what I'm saying. I have to emphasize that because if these videos ever get any amount of views, I have to keep repeating it so people hear it. But I think that that model of viewing life as a game, it has a lot of potential. And if you're going to view it as a game, then the model within that game of morality should not be a dualistic one. It can't be, in fact. It's too limiting. It will reproduce the same horrors that our current game of reality has reproduced, which is just A is not B, 1 is not 2, black is not white, red is not blue. It's a fucking Dr. Seuss novel, man. We're living in fucking Dr. Seuss. Does anyone else notice this? I feel like not Will Smith, Jesus. I feel like fucking Mugatu from oh my god. I'm failing so hard not remembering this. I feel like Will Ferrell's character from Zoolander, where he goes, "Does anyone else notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills." We're living in fucking Dr. Seuss. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish? Is that how you want reality to be forever? Is just 2 artificial sides fighting each other? 2 human hemispheres of the brain trying to rape each other for eternity? Does that sound fun to anyone? Does anyone not understand how that's already painfully boring? Like, it's not as if these alternate ways of thinking or viewing reality would result in 9 opponents fighting each other. That's not my point. My point is that anything is better than this. This Dr. Seuss bullshit. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish forever? Even if we make artificial bodies for ourselves, they still have 2 artificial hemispheres in their artificial brain? That's fucking nonsense, man. That's pathetic. I don't think we'll ever get to Mars with that mentality. Whether it's the Chinese or the Americans who get to Mars first, who the fuck cares? Mars is a dead rock. Mars was already inhabited by life, and life sucked it dry and moved on when the iron core of the planet died. Going to Mars and trying to reactivate the core is like trying to date your ex. Oh, she got a bunch of tattoos and fucked about 6 guys and had 2 illegitimate children, but you know what? She's still my ex. I'm gonna go back to her. Fuck Mars. Mars is a fucking dead rock. Who gives a shit? How about we improve Earth? How about we focus on where we are now instead of fantasizing about going back to our ex, the ex of life? Mars is a fucking wasteland. If there was any life and any structures on that planet, they were ground down to dust so fine that it's fucking microscopic. There's nothing on Mars for us beyond sending probes there to do research. Even that's a waste. Send probes into the fucking oceans of Earth. Why the fuck are we wasting money on Mars? There's a bunch of theories about what NASA's really doing with the money. I'm not going to talk about those, not in this video. But for fuck's sake, I'm a science fiction nerd. I love outer space. I love science fiction. But for fuck's sake, Mars is the biggest waste of time and effort and money ever. The amount of energy and effort we would have to expend and the human beings that would have to be thrown at that planet to derive even a small amount of energy or benefit from it for anyone is retardedly risky and stupid. Its only value is as a propagandistic move. And I guess, again, if you've got a fake stage where you're going to fake that you went to Mars, like maybe we faked we went to the moon, I'm not going to talk about that. Maybe it's true. I don't know. I don't care. I don't care. No, nobody should care whether it's real or fake. What's real is this dual hemisphere bullshit that we're all stuck in. We're all stuck in this ape meat brain mentality of, if you're not my friend, you're my enemy. It's just like George Bush said. If you're not with us, you're with the terrorists. That's my fucking point. It lacks nuance. It lacks context. It lacks intelligence. It is the most basic bitch, demonic animal level of interpreting reality, and we have to get away from it. And if we don't get away from it, we're fucked. We're fucked. And it won't be God or the Taurid meteors or global warming. It won't be any of those things that kills us. It'll just be us. We'll kill ourselves. We are our biggest threat. So again, whole point of this video, break out of that way of thinking. Stop supporting philosophies, religions, etc. that are trying to get you to keep thinking that way, and start trying to move the fuck out of your own perceptual limits. And again, it's not fundamentally possible to do that. You're always going to think according to the structure of your brain. Obviously, that's true. But you can at least try. You can at least virtualize the experience. You can at least try to think outside the box. Try to think differently. Try not to give in to the most obvious, easy explanation for everything, which is just we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes you have to believe that. But just because you have to believe it at certain times doesn't mean it should be your default fucking mentality. If it's your default, man, what a hell you must be living in. Anyway, guys, this video kind of went off the chain. I'm going to end it here. Thank you again for watching, for listening. I hope I've at least provided you with some nice sleep-inducing ASMR. Even if I've done that, great. Have a good sleep. But you're going to dream about me. I'm going to eat your dreams like an illithid. That's not true. Anyway, guys, I do hope you're doing well in your life. I hope that you're staying stable and sane any way you can. Again, I make these videos for fun. I make them on my off time when I'm bored. And I'm personally doing fine. I'm feeling fine. I'm not feeling suicidal. If my car drives itself into a tree at far above the speed limit, I'm feeling fine. So, anyway, I love you guys. I do. Not joking about that. I love all of you, no matter how fucked up you are, because I'm fucked up. And that's the silver lining of my life, is I was born fucked up enough that my fucked upness counters my ego and keeps me sympathetic to everybody else. That's God-given. That's a boon. It's a blessing disguised as a curse. In any case, enough about that crap. More videos to come about more interesting, crazy subjects like this. And as always, again, everyone watching, thank you, no matter who you are or who you work for. I hope you're doing well. As always, peace out, brothers and sisters.